You're listening to the Patriot Nation Podcast.
All right, welcome into another edition of the Patriot Nation Podcast. As always, a proud member of the CLNS group of podcasts. Make sure you subscribe and download all of those shows to get great Patriots content all week. But for this show, it's Pat Lane with my guy, Matt St. Jean. And today we are joined by the former executive director of the Patriots Hall of Fame, Bryan Morry. Bryan, thanks so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
No problem. How you guys doing?
Doing great.
Yeah. Doing great. Almost 4th of July here, which is nice.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And I'm wearing my Red Sox gear because I was at the Red Sox game last night and then again this afternoon after the game was suspended last night. And you know what? I thought it was appropriate to leave it on since the second game we're going to be talking about has some pretty big Red Sox implications right after it. So I figured, you know what? We'll leave the Red Sox stuff on, and we'll get into that once we get to game 2 here.
I got my Patriots shirt on, but I'm representing my daughter's lacrosse team on my hat.
Love it. Love it. That's it. Love to see it. So for those of you that have been listening for a long time, Bryan actually was on with me and Spags back in 2019. I was going back in the archives. I was like, oh, my goodness. So
the fact that 2019 is now back in the archives kind of hits you.
Yep.
I was doing the Pats from the Past podcast back then with Matt Smith.
Look at that. See? It's a whole new world. That was pre-COVID. Whole new world back then. But anyways. All right, let's dive right into it. Let's get into game number 1. Matt, you want to set us up for game number 1 here?
Yeah. Patriots hosting the Dolphins. This is October 10th, 2004. I don't think we have to do a whole thing on the Dolphins. This is the same Dolphins, basically the exact same Dolphins team that we've talked about twice in this series already. The Patriots beat twice the year before, in overtime down in Miami, and then 12-0 in the snow at home in December. And both of those
games well.
Yeah, two iconic Patriots games.
Yes.
This one, I think the biggest difference in this one, no Ricky Williams for the Dolphins. He is gone at this point for off-field reasons.
Yes.
And this is a Miami team coming into this one at 0-4. They talk about this on the broadcast. They have the worst offense in the NFL and the best defense in the NFL.
Yep.
Their defense is loaded. Like so many, Pat Surtain, Zach Thomas, Junior Seau, Jason Taylor. That's a great group to have with the defense built around, but would not lead to a lot of winning for them this year. They'd go 4-12. The coach, Dave Wanstead, gets fired a couple weeks later after this one. But at this point, still head coach of the Dolphins. Patriots favored by 11 points in this one. Actually, doing research, I found a column. It was Bill Simmons when he was doing a betting column for ESPN back in 2004 talking about this. That the Patriots as 13-point favorites with him taking them. And funnily enough, complaining about the Patriots win streak not getting enough attention.
Yeah, it's
I think that game later in the year, obviously one of Miami's 4 wins was against New England. Yep. It was like a team 10 games below 500 beating a team that was 10 games above 500 or something like that.
It was like the first time
it was like happened, yeah.
That was wild. That was, I believe that was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, was it not? Jason Taylor sacking Brady and him throwing it backwards or whatever.
Yeah, probably. And then the winning touchdown was scored with Troy Brown in coverage.
Yeah.
Yep. And I believe that was Darius Thompson catching it.
Oh, maybe. I don't remember that, but that's probably true.
I was one of those, because doing this, I'm like looking up the players as they come up, and it's like when we're doing one of the early games out of Miami, I was looking him up, and it's like, oh, that's the guy who catches the touchdown later on.
Yep.
That very, very forgettable.
Well, I know I'm old when I'm watching players that I covered in the league. I'm watching their kids now playing in the league. And Tom Brady throws an interception to Patrick Surtain in this game, I think.
Right. Yep.
And then played with Patrick Surtain Jr. in Tampa. So you don't see that every day.
You sure don't. No, you sure do not.
Speaking of players' kids, just a side note. Did any of you see Brandon Jacobs and his kid? That whole thing?
Yeah, his kid dwarfs him. That's insane.
Yeah, really?
He's a monster.
Because Brandon Jacobs was a big guy.
Yeah.
After this, you're going to have to go look up that photo because it is crazy.
His son is an absolute monster. Yeah. So, Matt, you did say that the roster is very similar to the 03 roster, and that is true. There is one very notable exception, however, because a rookie on the Miami Dolphins, Wes Welker, has a fairly big impact in this game. Olindo Mare gets carted off the field, hurt his calf in warmups.
Yeah, which just a general question I have, because they talk about that did they have the same rules around inactives in 2004 that they do now? Because every broadcast now, they'll start with, here are the players that are inactive, and it seems much more nebulous.
It was 53 on the active roster, 45 in an emergency quarterback.
Yeah, okay.
So you still had 8 inactives.
Okay.
So it's possible.
They never talk about it on the broadcast then on any of these.
No, which is interesting, and that's a kind of a big talking point in the broadcast now. But even a situation like today, if that had happened, you still don't have a guy. Even if you have a guy in the practice squad, it's too late to call him up, right? Yeah. And I think Mare was fine going into the game and heard it in warmups. And like I say, ends up getting carted off.
They mentioned he tweaked it the week before, and they thought he was going to be good to go, and then he wasn't.
Yeah. So then maybe in that situation, you probably should have activated another kicker just in case.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Well, that's what I was looking at, because he is in game uniform too.
Yeah.
So that's why I was looking at this whole thing, and I'm like, I don't know. You got a kicker who can't go and hasn't been on the field, and he's being carted off the sideline in his game uniform. How did we get into this situation in the first place? Why is he active?
Well, because the inactives were in 90 minutes before, and he was out for warmups.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's the way it works. So Wes Welker, who, by the way, before this had never kicked at any level, didn't kick in high school, didn't kick in college, so obviously hadn't kicked in the pros yet. And the Patriots are out receiving the ball, and he's out there kicking off on the opening kickoff. And of course, yeah, I know. And Dan Dierdorf is going nuts because he has a few great returns on there. He, at one point, kicks off. I believe it was after the field goal. He kicks off and then makes the tackle on the kickoff. And it's just he just was unbelievable. And it's one of those interesting things. So, but yeah, this game starts off really poorly for the Patriots, really bad for the Patriots. They come out and Brady tries to throw the ball to Kevin Casper. And as you mentioned, Brian, he's picked off by Pat Surtain. And Kevin Casper the Patriots, clearly their wide receivers completely depleted. You got no one out there. They do have David Patton back, but Troy Brown is still out. Deion Branch is still out. And so, you're dealing with really David
Bethel
Patton.
Johnson was a healthy scratch.
And David Givens played.
And Givens, yes. So it was Patton, Givens, and Kevin Casper was your third wide receiver in this game.
Or PK. They mentioned on the broadcast, we think we're going to get some PK Sam today. And
I don't think I saw him on the field once. No, I don't think I saw him on the field once. No.
It's a lot of Kevin Casper.
Yeah. Which is rough. And then they kind of trade 3 and outs. And then Jay Fiedler throws an interception to Randall Gay with his first career interception. He hadn't had an interception at any level since 2001 at LSU. And so had 2 picks in 01 and then didn't play in 03 because he was hurt. So, they kind of go back and forth. And as typical, this is, as we talk about this streak, what the Patriots did over and over and over and over again, even when they struggled offensively, when their defense makes a play for them, when they force a turnover, when they get them the ball back in an advantageous position, they take the ball and they score. And that's exactly what they do in this drive. They've had 0 success. Brady hasn't even completed a pass yet. And Randall Gay picks him off, and they end up driving down the field and scoring a touchdown. Brady throws, I believe he ends up throwing 2 completions. The second one is a 1-yard touchdown pass to Daniel Graham. who has his 5th touchdown in the first 4 games, has got a touchdown pass in all 4 games, and has got 5. He only finished the season with 7, but really, really big at the start of the year. And this one, Dolphins fans didn't love it. There was a 2nd and 22, and there was a roughing the passer call, which is a blatant roughing the passer call now. I don't know how blatant it was in 2004, but he went low on him, and it reminded me, just the way he goes down, of that 0-1 hit in the AFC Championship game, where he kind of bends backwards as he's getting hit low. And it ends up being a pass and a roughing the passer, and the Patriots get an automatic first down out of it, and of course end up punching the ball into the end zone. And so, and that's just what that's what the Patriots did, and that's what they were famous for doing this entire streak.
Yeah, and if memory serves, they scored first a lot.
Yes.
And a lot of times on opening possessions through that 03, 04, stretch. But I think they went at one point during that season, like 19 games in a row or something, where they scored first. Not at this point, but later in the 04 season, it was just they played from ahead a lot, and their defense was obviously very good. That was Vince Wilfork's rookie year. So you had Keith Traylor in the mix. You had 3 first-round picks on your defensive line. The linebacking core was ridiculous.
Yeah.
With Fife and McGinnis and Ted Johnson and Brewski and
Colvin,
Vrabel and Rosie Colvin. Yeah, I mean, they were loaded. And Randall Gay had a good year.
Yeah, he did.
Randall Gay's whole issue was always staying healthy, even in college.
Right.
And you'd see him in practice. It reminds me a little bit of Asante Samuel. When Asante Samuel came in, he was on this team obviously as well. But when Asante Samuel came in as a rookie, and you were at training camp practice every day, you're like, who's this kid got in the 4th round here? He's always around the ball. He's always getting his hands on the ball. And it kind of translated into game action when he got his opportunities. And Randall Gay was not Asante Samuel, but it was a little bit like that, in that, he had good ball skills and found his way to be around the ball. Even in that Super Bowl, Terrell Owens had a bunch of catches, but really no big plays in the game while Randall Gay was covering him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
and I think it's interesting to look back at that era of defense, because you think of the Bill Belichick defenses and, what they end up doing in 2014 and 16 and 2018 and 2019, how good that defense was. And you think of these blitz man defenses, and you go back to 03, 04, and it's zone. We're going to bring all kinds of crazy blitzes, and we're going to have corners who are just have that knack of being around the football, because Asante Samuel, Randall Gay, Ty Law, who is kind of hobbled at this point in his career and seemingly always playing through injury in this streak.
He got hurt 2 weeks later in Pittsburgh, didn't he? And missed the rest of the season. That Bruce Frank injury.
Yeah. Well, and the first game of the streak is the one where he has the pick 6 against Tennessee, where he's limping into the end zone, and there's a lot. And you can tell he's not quite the man corner that he used to be at the peak of his career, but he still has that knack for finding the football. Tyrone Poole is that kind of guy, and you got safeties who can hit hard and punish over the middle, and all kinds of pass rush you can generate. So it's just a recipe for creating havoc and scaring opposing quarterbacks.
Well, and it was versatility. They could play anybody anywhere, basically. Richard Seymour could play any spot on the defensive line. They could play a 4-3. They could play a 3-4. In fact, I think, did they play a 3-4 all year and then play a 4-3 in the Super Bowl, or vice versa? I think they played something in the Super Bowl.
I think it was a 2-5 they played in the Super Bowl, something like that.
It's just bizarre. They
which might have been at
threw a ton of different looks.
You have a guy like Willie McGinnis who can put his hand on the ground or stand up. Vrabel, same way. They just had so much versatility, and Richard Seymour up front was just dominant.
When you look at, it's funny because you're watching the game, and of course Willie has a pick in this game, and you're watching the game and you see him make that play, and you're like, man, I'm surprised he doesn't get more talk about the Hall of Fame. But then again, he doesn't have necessarily the counting stats. Of course, he is I believe he's still the NFL's leader in postseason sacks. But he doesn't. I don't think he got 100 sacks in his career, regular season sacks in his career, and so
70 something maybe.
Yeah, so it's like
I think the problem with Willie when it comes to that is just more or less consistency and health.
Right.
So you had that Pete Carroll stretch where he was in and out of the lineup a lot.
Yeah.
And then even when Belichick got here, 2000 was probably a little bit more the same. 2001, he was nicked up a bit. It really was the 2001 playoffs where I think his career went back to what it was more or less early on,
Right.
94 through 96. And then, but they were dealing with his health. And I remember they had Mike Wysick get him on a special program that was tailored just for Willie to try to keep him healthy. He had a sports hernia at one time. He had some back injuries. So he was kind of nicked up a lot. But I always felt like Willie was that unique guy that literally could decide. Like he could flip a switch and say, okay, it's time to play.
Yeah.
Just change gears.
Right.
And maybe that hurts him a little bit, that he maybe didn't always play that way.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
That's fair. That's a good point. So you mentioned, Matt, the how terrible the Dolphins offense was. Over 20 times they had gone 3 and out so far this season. They had gone over 30 possessions without a touchdown. They do end up scoring a touchdown in this game, but they had gone over 30 possessions without scoring a touchdown. They had more penalties than points to this point in the year. And they actually end up going above on the points, but it's pretty unbelievable. Where you talk about how undisciplined they are and how bad they are, especially offensively. It's just like it's no wonder that Wannstedt was fired. And by the way, this is a team that finished 10-6 the year before. They weren't terrible, and they just completely fell off the rails. And Wannstedt obviously was the guy who fell on the sword for it, and that's kind of the way it went. But this is kind of the Dolphins' MO, I think, over the last 25 years.
I always felt those teams, maybe not so much in 2004, but a lot of those teams in the late 90s, early 2000s for Miami got off to hot starts. Almost like they took advantage of teams coming to South Florida in September. You guys mentioned the game down there in 2003. The overtime game, that was the first time in history the Patriots had won in Miami in either September or October.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it took an overtime 82-yard pass from Brady to Troy Brown to
with
do
a blocked field goal and a missed field goal in there.
Yeah. Kicking off the infield dirt from the baseball stadium.
Unbelievable.
Yep. Which we did talk about it when we did that episode too. The infield dirt's only there for that game because the World Series had being played in Florida, and in another world, the Sox are winning Game 7, and you're playing. The Red Sox are going to be down there too to play a game like 2 days later on that very field, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, this Miami team too, their identity was built around Ricky Williams on offense, and I that also, once he's gone, I think he's retired or whatever it was after failing drug tests, then that everything kind of dries up because quarterback's not good enough, your receivers aren't good enough. You got a whole bunch of guys who can be decent complementary parts in an offense that has some kind of a top piece, but then once the top piece is gone, they're just kind of listless.
They had Chris Chambers, right? And
Randy McMichael at tight end.
A good 4th round pick, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Same year the Patriots drafted Dan Graham.
Wow.
Yes, I believe he's in his 2nd year, 3rd year. I can't remember when.
02.
Graham
was drafted.
was drafted.
McMichael burned Roman Pfeiffer and Rodney Harrison a number of times in the meeting in Miami the year before. You can see the talent with him.
Oh no, he was a good receiver. I don't know if he was that complete tight end, but
he certainly wasn't.
He was definitely a good receiver.
No, but and to your point, Matt, I mean, they had Leonard Henry, and their leading rusher in this game was Brock Forsey, who had 6 carries in 2004 outside of this game. So, it's just these guys, they're a bunch of no-names, right?
Sammy Morris?
Yep, Sammy Morris on that team.
He was, but for whatever reason, he had 3 carries for 7 yards. Don't know why. Brock Forsey had 13 for 44. So, he had a nice run. He did have a nice run on one of their drives, but I don't understand. So anyway, so they do score a touchdown. I believe Forsey is actually the one that scores a touchdown.
Forsey
that's
gets
not
him
true.
down there, and then Fiedler throws a pass to Chris Chambers.
That's right. Chris Chambers scores a touchdown on a really nice
Welker
route.
kicks the PAT, I think.
He does. Yeah, his first career NFL point. So
Then they have that weird punt play. Matt Turk.
Yes, and I don't know if
it wasn't even a bad snap.
Yeah, I'm not sure. And it was funny because they talk about it on the broadcast, and they were saying, like, was it a situation where he just did it himself? Was it called? But like Dave once had looked pissed after the play, so it was like, well, wait a second, maybe it wasn't called. I don't know.
The snap was off to one side, I think, but it looked like he could have kicked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's that point. It's Patriots are up 10-7 near the end of the first half. It's 4th and 7. You're in your own territory, and he just takes off and doesn't get it. Just to totally like Dolphins have a real chance, to at least go into halftime with it being a 1-score game, and then you're immediately giving another short field to this Patriots offense that has taken advantage of them time and time again.
And like they do,
Brady finds Givens.
Yep, they score a touchdown to Givens on a beautiful action play.
And there's also an unnecessary roughness on Sammy Knight in there hitting Corey Dillon.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's what that was. Or was that? This game got chippy. As I'm trying to. Both of these games we talked about today got chippy. I don't remember exactly what that unnecessary roughness was actually.
Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, it definitely did get chippy as the game went along. I believe. If you look at the team stats, I believe that the Dolphins actually had committed 12 penalties in this game. So, by the way, my stat was wrong. The Dolphins do remain with more penalties than points after this game. The Dolphins end up with 12 penalties. The Patriots end up with 7. But, it's one of those things where they just, I mean, you give the Patriots a short field. They go up here. They score. Then, on the first play it was the first play of the half. Fiedler gets the ball, scrambles for a first down, and gets hit by Roddy and fumbles. And the Patriots
first possession of the second half.
Oh, first possession. I'm sorry. And then the Patriots score a touchdown.
Corey Dillon had a big run on that drive. I think
he does. Yeah.
Didn't he get hurt in that game?
He got banged up after that
foot injury or an ankle injury or something like that. I remember because
he ends up.
Rabi Abdullah scored a touchdown.
Yes, he did.
Which I did find it funny in this one. Like Abdullah looks to be ahead of Kevin Falk on the depth chart. In this one, I know Kevin Falk missed some time that year, had death in the family, so I don't know if that's a factor in why that's going on.
And Kevin was more of your third down,
right?
Space runner, pass receiver. Kevin was a wide receiver in a running back's body.
Yes, I mean,
he was an excellent pass catcher, but he was great in space and he was good in pass protection.
Yeah.
Well, they mentioned on the scoring drive at the end of the first half, they mentioned that it's his first snap of the game and it's 2nd and 7, and Brady immediately hits him for a 14-yard gain, and that's what gets him down close to the goal line. They end up scoring a couple plays later.
Yeah.
Which that's something we see a lot from Brady, is him love and throw into those running backs. Put him in there, he's going to find him. But it's funny, you watch the 03 Pats, and Falk is the second back, and he's the third back at parts that season, but it kind of ends up being the second back when it's all said and done, as Mike Cloud kind of gets less playing time, and he's seeing like just full drives with him on the field. And it's funny to get to this point in the season, and it's Corey and then Rabi Abdullah and then Kevin Falk coming in, which, shout out to Rabi Abdullah for getting a touchdown in this streak.
Yeah. And so the Patriots here in the second half do not pick up a first down outside of, after that. I'm sorry, not in the second half. In the fourth quarter, do not pick up a first down in the entire fourth quarter. Meanwhile, the Dolphins get into the red zone 3 times. And instead of kicking field goals, and listen, I understand that you're down, but you're going for on fourth down in all of these situations. And at a certain point, if you take the points on at least one of those, you feel a little bit better about where you're at. But I do also understand you're down 14. Like, there's not a ton of time left.
And you don't know if the kicker is going to make those field goals.
Well, and that's the other part of it, right? Is that you don't know if Wes Welker has already hit one today, but you don't know if you can trust him necessarily hitting a 45-yard field goal or something like that, right? So
probably
that's a great point. I will say on the last drive, Fiedler throws a pass to Marty Booker. I think it was Tyrone Poole coverage. It was a perfect throw. It was a fantastic catch. I have no idea how it wasn't a touchdown. It makes absolutely no sense to me. The knee comes down. He's hitting the pylon as the knee comes down, and they mark him down at the 1 yard line. And I have absolutely no idea what they were looking at. I don't
replay
know.
Then, right?
Well, so it was inside 2 minutes, so they automatically replayed it because they weren't sure if it was a catch or not, and they called it a catch. But it was just like it was pretty clearly a touchdown, and they didn't call it a touchdown.
As Belichick used to say back then, we can put a man on the moon, but we can't get a camera on the goal line.
That's correct. Yes.
Which if I'm remembering correctly, is that the same pylon where later that season Corey Dillon goes over it against the Colts in the playoffs, and it's clearly a touchdown, and then they don't call it a touchdown?
I believe so. Yeah, because it was that left front pylon heading to the north end zone. And it's just like, no idea what they were looking at. So, and then, then Fiedler tries to run it on first down, gets stuffed, goes back to pass on second down, and gets rocked by Rodney Harrison. It actually gets knocked out of the game.
Right.
And then A.J. Feely comes in for the last 2 passes, and then he ends up throwing incompletion on fourth down to lose the game. But Brady finishes the game 7 for 19 for 76 yards passing, and the Patriots win 24-10.
Well, and that's where I think, obviously the defense, as we talked about, was legit. But you talk about Corey Dillon.
Yeah.
I mean, Antoine Smith was a good player when he was here, and certainly had his games, but he was not Corey Dillon. And Corey, what did he have? I think he set the single season record for the Patriots that year.
He did 1,600 yards.
Yeah. So just having Corey Dillon in there was definitely I don't think you see a lot of games where Brady throws for 76 yards and they win.
Right.
Without, a good solid running game like that. He had a couple probably in 2001 that were like that.
Yeah, right.
First start, he didn't throw for very many yards against the Colts.
That's very true. That's a good point. So they do. The Patriots run it, what's that, 28, 30, 34 times to running backs. Actually, 10 carries for Patrick Pass for 37 yards. He had 12 yards on 1 carry, which means he had 9 carries for 25 yards. I don't know why they kept giving Patrick Pass the ball, but okay.
Probably because Dillon went out.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, it's a fair point. So
you do have Abdullah and you do have Falk. So.
Yeah, Falk. Yeah, but they just obviously didn't feel comfortable with it.
They give Pass the ball a lot this season.
They do.
I mean, in that Cardinals game too, in week 2, you see him getting the ball.
Patrick Pass ended up having a pretty solid career for a 7th round draft pick out of Georgia.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree.
Solid. Could catch the ball out of the backfield a little bit. Was a hard-nosed runner. Although I do remember, I don't know what year it was, but I do remember he fumbled on a play where he pulled his hamstring and he just dropped the ball and grabbed his hamstring and fell on the ground. I was like, at least go down with the ball.
It's just, one of my favorite quotes of and I forget, it was someone I'm mic'd up and I forget who said it, but someone was like, that boy's as soft as puppy poo. And I was just like, it's just unbelievable. So one thing that I want to talk about outside of the game is the fact that the Patriots sent out the tickets to the season ticket holders months in advance of the game. And the absolute stones on the Patriots to pull this off is insane to me. And so the ticket, which is displayed at the Hall of Fame for anyone that's looking at it, I'm going to share my screen here because I have it pulled up here.
By the way, this was all Fred Kirsch.
Was it really?
Yep. And probably not very many people in the organization knew what was going on the ticket. This was not like some widely publicized thing. It was probably, I think it was Fred's idea. I'm sure Jonathan was aware of it. I mean, there's no way he does it without Jonathan's okay.
Yeah.
And probably a couple other people. But beyond that, I mean,
that's it.
Not now, people could have discovered it, obviously.
Right.
But
yeah.
you don't have to be looking for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So here's what I'm talking about. If you can take a look right over, if you look at the ref, right over the, and of course I got my mouse.
By the way, the
on,
ref is wearing number 19.
The ref is wearing number 19. Yes. If you look over the ref's shoulder, it says section 19. Over the other shoulder, you can see in, and then right next to this Browns player, you can see just the letter A, and then after Eugene Wilson's leg, you can see row here. So it literally says 19 in a row on this back wall here. Of course, the ref, as you said, is wearing number 19. And if you take a look at Eugene Wilson and Tyrone Poole, and you add up the digits, 2 and 6 and 3 and 8, that also adds up to 19. And so the fact that they, and listen, here's the thing. I mean, this is before, the internet really took off, right? People aren't on social media sharing this stuff, but the fact that they did this, and this would be a living testament if they had lost a game before this point. You're sending this out months in advance. If you lose the first game of the season to the Colts, this looks awfully stupid, right?
And that's,
go ahead, Matt.
Well, a game against the Colts too comes down to the very end,
right?
And also your Week 3 game. The Bills have the ball in Patriots territory, down by 7 in the fourth quarter. Like both of those games very easily could have been tied.
Yeah, I think if memory serves, and it was more where I don't think you would have had to look for it. So, yeah. Like I said, this was not something that was out there until they win the game, and then kind of Stacey James lets people know in the press box that this is on the ticket.
Yeah.
So I think the hope would have been that no one really discovers it if they lose before that.
That's a good point. That's a fair point. I will say I'm fairly certain that I saw it before the game only because I was looking at the ticket. So I was on the field for this Browns game that's displayed on the ticket. Mm-hmm. And so I was just looking at the ticket because I'm like, ooh, okay, I wonder what play this was. And I remember looking over the ref's shoulder and being like, wait, section 19. I'm like, does that exist? And then I saw the and I'm like, wait, what? What is going on here? And then I was like, oh my God, there it is. And so it's just incredible.
It definitely would have been a little bit of bad PR.
For sure. Some people would have eventually found it, right? But hey, listen, they did it. And so it doesn't matter. But it is really
like
cool.
That same season, guys. So we at the Super Bowl, I go to Stacey James, before we travel, where were we? Jacksonville?
Yeah.
Before we go down to Jacksonville and say, hey, can we do, a championship cover to hand out on the field of Patriots Football Weekly? And he's like, no. He's like, the Philadelphia papers requested it, the Boston papers, the Jacksonville. So the league doesn't want anyone doing it.
Yeah.
So we basically do it anyway.
Right.
So we go to Fred. I go to Fred, and Fred and I talk about it. And while we're in Jacksonville, we get a FedEx box. Michelle Muse was back in Foxborough, one of our graphic designers. And she makes the cover that has the 3 trophies on it and the word Dynasty, which was taboo at the stadium.
Yes.
Like there was no, probably coming from downstairs.
You would imagine. Yes.
Football, there was no Dynasty talk. And we put the word Dynasty, and we get the box, and I go to Bears Nigerian, and I say, hey, listen, we made a championship cover. It's sealed in a FedEx box. Can I give it to you to put in one of the equipment boxes? And if we win, just have one of the guys take them out. And if we lose, they just go away forever.
Right.
Do whatever you want with them. Like t-shirts, go to wherever they go, the losing t-shirts,
Right.
So he's like, yeah, okay. Didn't tell him anything that was on it. Just gave him the box.
Right.
And so we win. And the players all have the Patriots Cup Football Weekly cover that says Dynasty on it. It's on every video,
Yeah.
You ask William McGinnis on the stage, is it a Dynasty? And he goes, I'm not saying it, but it says it right here. So I want one of them, right? So I go down on the field on my way to the locker room, and I grab one off the field. I still have it somewhere. It's got footprints all over it. I think it's in a bin.
It's great.
And I pick it up, and I'm walking off the field with it. And here come the Crafts. And Robert sees me, and he goes, what is that? And I'm looking at him like, uh-oh. Like, oh no.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just stared at him and he goes, whose idea was that? And I go, it was mine? And he goes, well, it was a bad one. And he walked off. So I call Fred, who's up in the press box. I'm like, Fred, Robert just screamed at me about the cover. He's like, don't worry about it. And it came out like later that week. It was in the Inside Track in the Herald. Remember the Inside Track in the Boston?
Yeah.
Gail and Laura posted that gossip column that they were upset at the staff of Patriots Football Weekly, and people assumed the Crafts knew about it. They knew nothing.
That's wild.
They just did it.
That's unbelievable.
Well, you know what? I think what makes that even better is that one of the famous moments from that Super Bowl is Belichick's pregame speech, where he's talking about how the Eagles' victory parade route.
If you guys, if you're interested, I mean, this is the right day if you want to go.
To hype them up, and I think that's like, even it reminds me of a couple weeks ago when you got the Pacer. Was it the Pacer? No, the Thunder. They already have the buses ready to go for the championship before Game 7. And it's like, I know every team's going to be doing this to some degree. What really matters and what really matters is the detail in keeping it under lock and key so no one is able to leak it beforehand. And like, I think that kind of speaks to the Patriots as an organization, though, because like you guys did it properly to make sure no one was ever going to find out about that unless you win. And clearly the Eagles did not.
If you go back to 2001, when they went to Pittsburgh for the AFC Championship game, because of 9/11 that year, there was only 1 week between the championship game and the Super Bowl. And so, the league was preparing New Orleans for the Super Bowl. And all we were hearing was that everything, because, you have to send support staff down there to get ready in case you win the championship game. And all we're hearing, whether it was true or not, I don't know, is how the hotel was decorated for the Steelers.
Yeah.
And then somebody got a hold of, or I don't know where, a Steelers AFC Champions t-shirt that they had in the locker room before the game. And the Patriots, obviously behind the scenes, were doing preparation.
Right.
But the players had received nothing. No information about tickets, nothing. We got on the plane to fly back to Boston from Pittsburgh, and the players received their envelopes about all their Super Bowl arrangements on the plane on the way back from Pittsburgh. And I remember we got home. I think we went back to the stadium. We finished Patriots Football Weekly, and I went home and slept for an hour and a half and drove back and got back on a plane to New Orleans.
That's wild.
Awesome.
That's what a week. Incredible. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So that's unbelievable. All right, Matt, should we take our ad break here? Oh, by the way, Belichick did get a Gatorade bath at the end of this game. So, as much as we talked about kind of the streak weighing on them a little bit, as much as they probably pretended like the streak didn't weigh on them and didn't matter, it absolutely mattered to them for 100%. Sure.
Yeah. One of the things I noticed the second that you start rewatching this game is what Bill Belichick is wearing. He's got the red hoodie on for this game. And there was just, I don't know how superstitious Bill is, and I don't know how much he thinks about this stuff, but like, you've won 18 in a row, and for the 19th game, he breaks out the red hoodie and you win.
Well, if you want to do an episode, if you want to do an episode about his hoodies, you got to get Mike Dussault on.
Yeah,
he has a spreadsheet of his record in every.
Oh yeah,
it's unbelievable.
It's incredible. But there's a part of me that's like, all right, he wore it for the 19th game to set a record in this one. Is that why he wears it in Super Bowl 42? Does he think it's good luck at that point? I'm probably reading too much into it, but it was just something that I picked up on.
Probably in his locker.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
It might have just been the temperature for that particular sweatshirt.
So I know you want to take a break, but I think the story of the charcoal hoodie, the original Belichick hoodie, that was not approved sideline gear at the time.
Really?
And I think Donnie Brocher, the equipment manager, used to get told, put this in his locker so he doesn't wear that. And Bill would just wear it because he liked it. And he cut the sleeves off it, And I think because he wore it and it became so popular, because it was like the biggest seller in the pro shop.
Yeah.
I think the league approved it as sideline apparel because of Bill.
That's unbelievable.
That makes sense. Well,
What a
yeah, at that
legend.
point, you might as well try to cash in on it if you're the league.
Correct. Yes. Yep. Exactly.
Not related to this one, but I did just around the league that week. I thought it was interesting. A couple big overtime games. The Vikings are playing Houston. They blow a 21-point lead and then win in overtime anyway. Dante Culpepper throws 2 different 50-yard touchdowns in that game.
Both to Randy Moss.
Yep, one to Randy Moss. The other one, of course, I just went away from it. But it's the game winner in overtime. He throws it to Marcus Robinson. Blast from the past. And then I think this kind of segues us into the next one. So we'll do this and then the ad break. But Seattle playing at home, undefeated at that point against the Rams. They're up 27-10 with just under 9 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And the Rams end up scoring 23 unanswered points to tie it and then win it in overtime. So the Seahawks come off of that into Foxborough the following week. Their only loss, so they have not trailed in the regular season at that point, even though they have a loss on the record. Yeah. But some big comebacks that week. And the 49ers also had a big comeback. They were down by 16 points in the fourth quarter and ended up winning in overtime. So some notable stuff there. And Wes Welker does win Special Teams Player of the Week in the AFC, which feels very deserved.
He was a rookie, right?
He was a rookie, yes. Undrafted rookie.
Texas Tech.
Yep. No.
First point scored in the NFL ends up being at Gillette. It's just funny how that comes back around.
Well, and this is why this really is the catalyst to why Belichick wants him in the first place, because he sees all the stuff that he can do, and in fact, he's willing to pretty much do everything. And does in the course of his career. So shows the type of player he is. So, but yeah. All right, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back for that Seahawks game. This break, of course, is for Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to turn your sports dollars into cash. With millions of members, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Now, I know basketball and hockey are both over, but baseball is still going on. Women's basketball is still going on. And so what you have an opportunity to do here is create your lineups, and you can do whatever you want with your lineups. You want to throw an esports guy and a baseball guy and a women's basketball girl in there, do it. You absolutely can. And again, a reminder that they take Venmo, they take Apple Pay, they take MasterCard for quick and easy withdrawals and deposits as well. Don't forget Taco Tuesday, 15 to 25% off of select players on Tuesdays, and Flex Friday. Of course, you have to opt in for it, but Flex Friday, if your lineup loses, you get your money back in promotional dollars the second that the lineup closes. So what are you going to do? Download the app Prize Picks, put in the promo code CLNS. When you put that in, you're going to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. You don't have to win, just got to play it. So again, download the app Prize Picks, put in the promo code CLNS, and you'll get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, let's get into this. Let's get into this Seahawks game.
Yeah, so Patriots already have the record at this point, so now you're trying to extend it. It is October 17th, 2004, which is a date that lives in infamy in Boston sports for other reasons, which I think we're going to get into at some point in this. But Patriots come into this one 3.5-point favorites over the Seahawks. Seahawks are a good team that year, coached by Mike Holmgren. They got Sean Alexander, Matt Hasselbeck. This is a team that goes to the Super Bowl the next year. They actually end up trading for Jerry Rice 2 days after this game. They have a rookie punter punting for the first time, and then they go trade for Jerry Rice and cut him 2 days later. So this is a cloudy 50-degree Sunday in October in Massachusetts. There's 1,000,001 of those. And just kind of, this game starts off as just another game for the Patriots. They race out to a big lead. Seahawks come roaring back, and the Patriots end up finishing it off at the end. And then that night, you've got ALCS Game 4, Red Sox being down 3-0 in that series to the Yankees. And I do think this there's a nice almost like bookend here with the streak. Like when the streak starts, it is that Patriots-Titans game. The Red Sox are playing in the playoffs at the same time, and the fans are almost reacting to updates of the Red Sox game more than they're reacting to the Patriots game. Now, by this point, the Red Sox are down 0-3 in that series, and Patriots are setting records. And now, in that span, that might be the stretch that kind of starts to turn Boston from a baseball city into a football city. I think that's still up for debate with a lot of people, but as a kid growing up, it kind of felt like, it's Patriots country. And this is, at that point, it most definitely is, in a way it isn't when the streak starts.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. We were talking earlier about in 2003 when they were playing Tennessee, and Steve McNair scores a touchdown during the Red Sox playoff game as David Ortiz is doubling off Keith Folk, and the crowd at Gillette Stadium is cheering, and Richard Seymour was upset about it after the game. If you want to go watch the Red Sox, go to Fenway Park. So, 2004, obviously, you get David Ortiz's heroics again. Yep. And just an incredible, obviously, that comeback and that whole thing, was just awesome. It was just a great time, as the Patriots are breaking records and the Red Sox obviously have the greatest comeback in ALCS history. And then I just remember as a Boston sports fan thinking when they got up 3-0 on the Cardinals in the World Series, thinking, okay, well, of course we're going to blow it now.
Right.
Like we're the first team to come back from 3-0. We'll be the second to 3-0.
Yeah.
That just be the story.
100%. That's the Red Sox. And you know what's funny is that, so I was a junior in college, and I remember, I think I was at this Patriots game, but I know that I was back in my dorm for the Red Sox game, and they lose, and I'm going to bed pissed off like we all were. And I said to my roommate, I said, yeah, it's fine. They're going to win 8 in a row and win the World Series. Don't worry about it. No big deal. And they actually did it. And it's like, wait a second. All right. I wasn't serious.
I think this is the game too, the Patriots game, where Ty Law ties Raymond Claiborne's interception record.
It is. Yes.
And I remember it so well. It's not even because of the game itself, but later on I was involved with the top 10 Patriots of all time on NFL Network. Yeah. And they interviewed Hasselbeck for that. And he talks about the play. And he says, we call this play. And I was like, Ty Law's going to jump this route. He goes, and I throw the pass, and he jumps the route. And he goes, and of course it's a record-setting interception. And they stop the game. And he was funny about it.
And Hasselbeck's from New England, though. They show his house. Yeah, they show his house during the game, and his family has a green monster in their driveway. Yeah. And then hung over the green monster is the "Welcome Back Hasselbeck" banner with the Seahawks logo. It's a tough start to this game for him, by the way, because he throws picks on the first 2 Seahawks drives. Yeah. One that's deflected by Richard Seymour, then caught by Willie McGinnis on a screen, and then that one to Ty Law, which puts the Patriots up.
And by the way,
nothing.
Can we just say, it's the ultimate broadcaster jinx? I mean, Hasselbeck's running on the field to start the game, and they put up on the bottom, hasn't thrown an interception, 88 passes. I'm like, wait, what are you doing? What are you doing to this guy? And he throws picks on his first 2 drives. And, it's just, unfortunately, that's the way it goes. And of course, what do the Patriots do? They score on both of those drives, and they're up 10-0 before you even can blink. They're already up 10-0, and the Seahawks at that point, once the Patriots score another touchdown to go up 17-0, you're looking at this game's already over. The Seahawks have done nothing offensively. The Patriots are killing them, and of course it doesn't end up that way. But but they're destroying them.
When Seattle hadn't trailed at that point in the season, so this is a real punch in the face to them. This is the first time that they had been in that spot in a long time.
And Brady took a big hit in that game.
Yeah.
And you wonder today if concussion protocol would have pulled him out of the game, because I remember that his earpiece came off his helmet or something.
Yeah, everything went flying. The helmet, the earpiece, everything goes flying.
Buffalo in 2001.
No.
But pretty bad.
He got sandwiched between 2 guys. And matter of fact, he fumbled on that play. And Michael Boulware, who would also pick him off, I believe, on the next drive, who's, by the way, Peter Boulware's little brother, force that fumble, but he came in and hit him hard, and Brady got hit from the other direction as well, and everything goes flying off, and he's like feeling his face afterwards. I thought he lost teeth or something like that.
Well,
But yeah,
right, and that's a symptom, isn't it?
Yes, and so that's the thing, is that I think he definitely would have been pulled off, or at least gone into the medical tent to be like, all right, let's give him the baseline and just see what it looks like. Concussion spotter would have been right in there.
Well, and then you look at the way this game goes. Patriots go up 17-0. It's 20-3. I think it's 23. It ends up being 20-3, and then Seahawks had a field goal. It's 20-6.
Mm-hmm.
Seahawks had another field goal early in the third, and it's 20-9. So it's not a ball game yet, but
and it was part of that but dope rank defense that they always had.
And then I do think this is the thing. Like, that Patriots defense was designed to create havoc, especially for like pocket quarterbacks. Like, that was the perfect defense against a Peyton Manning, because you could bait him into making throws and pressure him. He wasn't athletic enough to scramble.
Mm-hmm.
But like, Hasselbeck's athletic and also not really afraid to throw the ball. So when he throws picks early in the game, it's not going to deter him from trying some of those throws later. And I think this is almost something you see with Jake Delhomme in the Super Bowl the year before too, is that sometimes that bend but don't break defense has issues against quarterbacks who aren't good enough to know that they're not supposed to try those throws again, and they just keep doing it, and eventually it does connect.
Well, and Super Bowls are a little different because of the length of the day and the length of the game. I remember talking with Matt Chatham actually about this back then, and when they were playing, I don't know if it was Carolina or Philadelphia. Maybe it was Philadelphia. He felt like they were too amped up and hyped up in the pregame, not realizing how long it is with the longer halftime and everything, and the longer day leading up to it, and all the pomp and circumstance. And so, in a Super Bowl, everybody's more fatigued in the fourth quarter. And I think that Carolina game was a great example. I mean, you had first quarter with no points and a third quarter with no points. Fourth quarter was a record-setting amount of points. It was like whoever had the ball last.
Yeah. And we also talked about bad field conditions for that too, which play into it, which I feel like can make the fatigue worse if you're slipping all the time and can't get your footing the way you want to. You're just going to expend more energy to do less and longer day, and then the energy of the Super Bowl. that is its own factor on that.
Yeah. So going into this game, the Seahawks had allowed 17 first quarter points to this point, right? They've played 4 games, they've allowed 17 points in the first half. And the Patriots scored 20 in the first half of this game, as you mentioned. And, so it really just points to the fact that the Patriots can do whatever they want to this team, at least in the first half. They're moving the ball up and down the field. Looks like they're really running away with it. And obviously the Red Sox are playing later on that night. And, by the way, what a broadcasting crew for this. You got Dick Stockton, Chris Collinsworth, and Troy Aikman all in the booth. And I think it's Collinsworth who says, Patriots are up 20-3. Like, hey, why are you going to try, trot the Patriots out there against the Yankees? Like, they're not going to be tired after this one. Maybe they can go for another one, And so, it's just kind of a funny statement. But again, they're killing them at this point, and it looks like they're going to run away with it.
And then you get to the start of the fourth quarter, and it's Brady gets rocked on that hit on the first play of the fourth quarter and fumbles. Yep. You get the ball back. He throws a pick immediately. Seahawks go down. Corin Robinson with a big catch, big run by Sean Alexander, another run by Sean Alexander, and they're in the end zone. They get the 2-point, and all of a sudden it's a 3-point game with about 11 minutes left. It happens fast.
And then they trade field goals, and I'll never forget the play that iced that game.
Oh,
on the great catch by Bethel Johnson.
Yeah,
that play where he comes from the top side of the field, Brady rolling in the opposite direction against his body, and then turns and lets loose that, what was it, a 48-yard
48, I think, yeah.
And Bethel just lays out for it, and I think they challenged it. It was upheld.
They did, yeah.
But it was just one of those plays where you're like, whoa, that's one of those plays that you just remember.
Yep, 100%. And what's funny about it is that if Brady throws that a yard shorter, Johnson's walking into the end zone for a touchdown, right? But as you said, Brady's rolling out against his body to his left. He's got pressure coming behind him that he can probably feel, and he just fires it down there. And Johnson, to his credit, I mean, runs, and you see kind of the safety almost like he's running with him, and he's like, yeah, no, there's no way I'm getting to that ball. And Johnson lays out for him, makes a great catch.
And I think Belichick talked about it after the game that they would just say, just throw it up there and let him go get it.
Yeah.
You can't overthrow him.
Correct. Yeah. And
one of the things about Bethel Johnson, he didn't really ever fit in here, right? But he's a guy who obviously was a tremendous kickoff returner. Mm-hmm. I remember when they drafted Tony Simmons. He was like the fastest guy at the combine.
Wisconsin, yeah.
And you look at him play and practice, say, all right, he has more track speed than football speed.
Yeah.
Bethel Johnson would go from 0 to full speed like right away. Like he had just high intensity game speed.
Yeah.
Catch a kickoff and boom, he was at full speed. And on this play, I think you saw that speed come into play. And then in the playoffs that year, you mentioned if he throws it a yard short, he walks in the end zone. Was 2004 the year they beat Tennessee?
No, that's the year before. So that's the first drive of the divisional round.
Drive of the game, he hits him in stride for a touchdown.
Yeah.
Well, what I think makes this play
the first playoff game was against Indy this year.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think what makes this play so interesting to me is that Bethel Johnson's inactive. He's a healthy scratch the week before that. Yep. And now, you look at the situation and you're up 23-20. There's just over 2 minutes left in this game, and it's 3rd and 7. So the Patriots need to move the chains to seal this game. And you're dialing up a play action deep shot to the guy who you didn't trust to put on the field the week before, and you're connecting on it.
It's one of those plays when he throws it, you go, no. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Well, listen, the Seahawks have chances here too, right? Corn Robinson almost makes a few, and Corn Robinson's a great game. He has 150 yards receiving in this game. But he has one or two plays where he dives for a ball. He has one in the end zone where he can't get his feet down. And he has another deep shot that he has a chance at, and he has to lay out for it, and he can't hold on to it. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you make the plays that have to win the game. And Matt and I've talked about this a few times on here, but Bethel Johnson, we look back as a bust, right? And as a guy that stunk and wasn't any good. But you go through this streak and you watch these games again and you realize how much of a contributor he was. Now, maybe it was only as a kick returner, right? And maybe there were times when, you obviously wanted more from him at wide receiver, but then he's making big plays, both as a kick returner and a wide receiver.
Yeah.
And so, he becomes obviously you wish you could have gotten more out of a second round pick, but even still, in this streak of 21 straight games, he's an important contributor to the team.
Yeah, and I remember talking to Scott Pioli about him a little bit and what the reasoning was when they picked him. And he said, he's not necessarily our type of guy, but we felt with his tools, if we got him in with Troy Brown and Deion Branch and David Givens, he'd kind of follow along that. And he never really did that. Yeah. But he certainly had some big plays. I think he had the Cleveland game. He returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown. Maybe he had the
04.
He had
in the 03 Cleveland game.
Indianapolis.
Yes.
Right before the half, after the Colts had scored.
Yep.
Returned. The answer team answered with that touchdown. So make a decent amount of big plays.
In that Colts game, he also returns the kickoff very far on what ends up being the game-winning touchdown drive.
Right.
Yep.
And I will say, you mentioned Cleveland. Like the Cleveland game in 04, he opens that game with a kickoff, which I still vividly remember where I was when that happened because we were at 12 o'clock mass and we were racing home to try to get home before the game started. And we were like pulling in the driveway and my uncle calls. He goes, "Did you see that?" We're like, "What do you mean?" It's like it just turned 1 o'clock. He's like, "They already scored." But
I think I was sitting next to Paul Perillo in the press box, and he goes, "That's game."
Yep, that's accurate. Yeah,
he used to do that all the time. Paul would just declare the game over in the first quarter.
Yeah.
But the Browns game in 03, the first play from scrimmage in that one is a deep pass down the sideline to Bethel Johnson. It comes up like a yard short of the end zone. So he had some big plays. I do want to. We're talking about Bethel Johnson. I want to go back to the last drive, or the second to last drive for Seattle in this one, and just walk through a sequence of plays that was absolutely ridiculous because it's a 6-point game at this point. and the Seahawks are at midfield. You get a 24-yard completion to Sean Alexander.
Yep.
So now you're right on the verge of the red zone. You have a play where the Seahawks commit a false start, but in trying to sell the false start, Roosevelt Colvin absolutely decks the guy, the tight end, and runs through him.
This is the second time in the game he's done this. He did it earlier in the game as well.
Jeremy, what was the tight end's name?
Jeremy
Stevens, but it looks like it was Itula Mill who was the tight end involved in that one based on the play sheet here. It's a deserved unnecessary roughness, I think, that Roosevelt Colvin gets, but also one that I've never seen called before.
Yeah.
And then it's like the Seahawks have 2 penalties on the next play, but they went backwards, so they get declined. Then the Patriots get a free rush on the play after that, and Hasselbeck panics and throws it to no one and gets an intentional grounding. And then Mike Vrabel jumps off sides. So it all sets up a 3rd and 17, and Hasselbeck just checks it down. And then the Seahawks don't know what to do, and they waste like a minute of clock getting the field goal unit out there and kicking it, which ends up being very important because the Seahawks had a chance and they pulled in 3 points. You have an opportunity to get a stop, get the ball back, and go tie or take the lead. Instead, you wasted a minute, and then Bethel Johnson has that catch. 2 plays later, Corey Dillon takes it in, and that's the ballgame.
Well, and they mentioned on the broadcast, too, at this point, they're down 6 points. Yeah. What do you like? You're not even taking a shot at a first down. You're just checking it down. It's just like it was stupid. And I get it. You don't want to throw an interception there, but like you're already in field goal range. Like you don't take a shot to try to get the first down and win the game. Like never mind pulling within 3. And that was so. But that's the way it goes. And then by the time they get the ball back, there's 2 minutes left, and they drive down the field. They actually end up getting stuffed. There's an untimed play because of the pass interference in the end zone, and the Patriots stuff them at the goal line, and they're all celebrating that they stuffed them at the goal line and to win by 10. But
what's
just their attitude?
What is it with these two teams in last-second plays at the goal line?
It's very true. It's very true.
I was curious. I looked it up before this. The last time that the Patriots and Seahawks played a game that wasn't a 1-score game at some point in the final 2 minutes was 1990.
Yeah.
Because it was overtime
the Patriots clearly lost that one.
No, the Patriots won that one in 1990.
Oh, they went 1-15.
Was that not the... Do I have to... It might have been at the end of the 89 season then? I'm not sure.
Maybe. But, I think they beat the Baltimore Colts. Was it still Baltimore in 1990? In like week 2 and then lost 14 games in a row that year. The Rod Rust season.
I was going to say that's the Rod Rust era, right? Oh, Lord.
But you know what's funny about? So I got a quick Hasselbeck story for you. So I'm at the Super Bowl in Indianapolis in 2007, and Thursday night I'm at this NFL party, and I'm with a friend of mine, and the party's kind of winding down, and I see Hasselbeck probably 30 feet away talking to somebody, and they have helmets and prop footballs around the party as props, right? So I go like this to my buddy. I say, "Hey, I'll give you $10 if you could throw a pass to Hasselbeck." And so he takes a $10 bill out of his pocket and he puts it on the table. And I go, "You want me to do it?" He goes, "Yeah." So I pick up the football. I wait till Hasselbeck looks up. I point at him and I throw it to him, and he catches it. So we go over and start talking, and we're just shooting the breeze with him. He was really friendly, I had never met him before, but his dad played here,
Yeah.
We're talking about the Patriots a little bit. I go, "I got to ask you a question." I go, "The Packer playoff game where you said at the overtime coin toss, we'll take the ball and we're going to win." And he goes, "It just came out." It just came out. Like, he was so good about it. He laughed.
Yeah. What are you going to do at that point? Like, it is what it is, unfortunately, right? And
6 right after that.
Oh, brutal. Just brutal. So for you, oh, go ahead, Matt. What were you going to
you were right. It was 1990, and the Seahawks did win it. I just had it backwards. But
okay,
yeah, a whole lot of very close games between these two franchises.
Yeah, well, 92 they played and the Patriots lost, and that's why they ended up. That's why they ended up with or was it a coin toss that the Patriots lost? I can't remember. I don't know. Either way, they had the same record in 92, and then the Patriots ended up with the number 1 pick. Because of some weird tiebreaker. So Brian, you're around the team. at this moment. You're covering the team. You're on the beat, covering the team. Obviously, they win 19 in a row. This game actually ties the record for most regular season wins consecutive ever. And of course, sets a new standard again, for 20 in a row. What is it? What's the feeling like around the team? Obviously, you feel like, and it's funny because you mentioned Paul saying like the game's over, and you feel like at that moment in time, you really could kind of say those things, and they were because they were that good. But
I just
around the
remember,
team,
what I
must have been
remember
fun.
most about it? The focus being on one game. I think Teddy Bruschi said all the time, we have, pick a number, but 15 one-game winning streaks.
Yeah.
16 one-game winning streaks. And I really think that's the way they tried to think about it. And, people always would be critical of Bill and how he was with the media. But I think Bill's biggest thing was consistency, that he was never going to go out into a press conference and say something that different from what he said to the team. So if it was, don't talk about this, let's focus on this, that's where Bill would go and talk. And I still remember, what year was it, 2014 when they had the On to Cincinnati?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I remember calling Bears. Now I'm not covering the team at this point. I'm just running the Hall of Fame. And I remember calling Bears and saying, like, because they had struggled, and that was the year they lost to Kansas City in Monday Night Football.
Yes. Yep.
And then, that was after that game, right? So they weren't off to a great start. I think Brady, they beat Oakland maybe to start the year, but it wasn't a great game, and they were just kind of
like 16 points in that one,
scuffling a little bit. And
Jimmy G's back there, right?
Yeah, and he gives that whole On to Cincinnati speech on the Wednesday press conference, and I remember thinking, well, that's not going to fly for very long. And I remember calling Bears and go, listen, you guys keep struggling. He's not going to be able to come in here and do that every week. And by Friday of that week, I was like, son of a gun. He took all the attention away from the Kansas City loss, away from the players, and all anyone was talking about was On to Cincinnati. And I was like, maybe that was on purpose.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
But we all know what happened after that. They rolled Cincinnati and went on and won the Super Bowl. So, but like, it's just one of those things where I think Bill's press conference answers were very careful in relation to what he was telling the team and what the message was to the team.
Yeah.
So, I think so that was that whole, what happened, when you lost to a team earlier or the last time, Bill had no problem talking about that. Hey, you know what happened the last time we played them? They had the buses started the second quarter. We played so badly, but if you beat them the last time, last game doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And so as they're winning all those games, that's Bill's consistent message. Nothing that has happened matters. It's only this week. And I think the leadership on that team did a really good job with that.
When you go back to 2003, there's a moment in that, I think it's after the Miami win at home, and they come back into the locker room, and Belichick already knows that Jacksonville has won their game, and that's who they're playing the next week. And his first thing is, Jacksonville just won. We got a hot team coming in here next week. We got to get ready for that one. And immediately turning, like, those were his first words in the locker room. And it's just, I think the awareness of, he has to, like, he's not following that score during the game. So he has to have somebody relaying that information to him that Jacksonville won so he can bring that up.
And I don't think, not that this is unique to Bill Belichick, but I think as a coach, especially in that environment, the hardest thing I think about coaching in the NFL is when you lose, you got to wait a whole week to play again. Whereas in baseball, you go out there the next day. And so you live with those outcomes. And for Bill, and again, not that this is unique to him, but I think that with a lot of coaches, and certainly with him, is no matter, even if you win, you're like, okay, well, good, I'm glad we won, but now we got to go win again. And it's why they say a lot of these great players and coaches They remember the losses way more than the wins.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Sure.
and so I think that Bill is probably like that in a lot of ways. You know, obviously, I'm sure he could sit here and tell you details about his Super Bowl wins, but you know, I think there's a lot to that where like, okay, we won, let's move on. We're supposed to win.
Right.
Now let's get ready to win again.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, when you win so consistently and so much, what do you focus on, right? And Rodney was like a master at that too, where, you know, you're doubting us.
Always the persecuted.
14-2 and won the Super Bowl. Like, what are you
Yeah,
talking
and no
about,
one
dude? Like,
believes in us.
right, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know, to your point about Peruski, you know, saying that they're looking at every week. I mean, look at the totality of the 21 game win streak, and they actually have they throw a graphic up here right around the 2-minute warning when the Patriots are up by 3 in this situation, and I just kind of took it and updated it a little bit. And so throughout the 21 game win streak here, they have 11 wins by 8 points or less. They trail or are tied in the fourth quarter in 8 of the games that they win, and they have 2 wins in overtime. And so you talk about like 11 out of the 21 wins are by 8 points or less. So you're talking about more than half of the streak are close one-score games. And those are the types of games that these Patriots teams always won because they were prepared every week. They weren't blowing teams out. You know, it's kind of crazy.
Never hate themselves.
Yes, exactly.
And that's what, you know, I know even when Bill was rounding out his Patriots career here, that had sort of changed a little bit.
Yes.
You know, and people would talk about that a lot. And I think those teams, they did a great job of taking advantage of the opponent's mistakes and not making as many of their own. And I remember down in Houston, I think it was in 2003, a game they won in overtime. And I want to say Brady threw an interception in overtime. And it was a game Houston wasn't very good. And I asked Bill after the game if he felt like they got away with one today or something to that effect. And he snapped at me. And it made me think about it. You know, fans and media always say, oh, they should have won this game or they should have won that game. And I never use that phrase anymore after that. And he kind of opened my eyes to the notion that you either make the plays to win or you make the plays to lose. And so does the opponent. There's no should have. The game is 60 minutes or longer sometimes. And like, there's no should have. There's could have. But you have to make the play when the play needs to be made to win. And if you don't, you don't win. There's no should have. And I've always kind of embraced that since that day, actually, when he snapped at me. And it made me think about why he snapped at me.
Yeah.
Because he's like, what are you talking about? There's no, I don't feel like we got away with one. We worked all week to win this game, and we won the game. Doesn't matter how. And if you remember, even in 2003, you know, they were winning games. They had that stretch at home where they didn't allow any touchdowns. They won 12-0 twice. I think Miami in the snow fireworks game and the Dallas game. And everyone was kind of minimizing their victories. Oh, they don't blow anybody out. They're not that good. Well, most games in the NFL are decided by a score. You know, you look at the big picture. So, you know, but the fact that they were able to win all those games showed how mentally tough they were.
It's true.
Yeah. When you come back to this game against Seattle we're talking about, and it's one play to kind of ice it at the end, and you're calling on a guy to execute it in Bethel Johnson, and he does, and he makes a fantastic catch. Obviously, Brady with an amazing.
And if he drops it, they punt, and who knows?
Right.
And maybe the defense is getting a stop after that. But yeah, the resilience. Then that Houston game, I think to me, is one where the resilience really stands out, because they should have won that game 3 or 4 different times. And you're looking up and it's like, man, it's still overtime. This game's still going. You know, you wouldn't blame any team for, you know, letting the frustration show a little at that point. And they never do. You know, they just keep doing whatever you have to do to win. And
they played complementary football.
Yeah.
You know, if they needed to score 30 points, they scored 30 points. If the defense needed to hold them down and keep them to 10 points, they did it. You know, I think they held opponents to like 17 points or less in like more than half of those games.
Yeah.
So they, you know, it was a good complementary team with a good defense and a solid offense and an 0-4 that was built around the running game. And you know, one of my favorite things in that season, guys, I know you've already talked about the first 2 games of the year, but how the competition committee changed the rules 3 weeks into the season. And I remember asking Belichick, you know what I'm referencing?
3
weeks. Was it the double timeout?
Yes. In week 1, when Vanderjagt was kicking the line up to kick the field goal, you know, Vrabel calls timeout, and that's when Vanderjagt gave the money sign to the Patriots sideline.
Yeah.
And then as he's getting ready to kick again, Vrabel signaled for timeout, but the rule dictated that you just didn't award the second timeout. Well, you know, he missed the field goal by 20 yards to the right. But I think he made a comment about being distracted by it. Week 2, they go to Arizona. Neil Rackers misses a 50-plus right before the half. They did the same exact thing.
Yep.
So then the competition committee changes the rule. So I grabbed Bill after a press conference to ask him about it, and he was really kind of pissed. He was like, listen, I agree with the rule change. I proposed the rule change in the offseason, and they tabled it. And now they want to change the rules. So now we play 2 weeks under one set of rules and 14 under another.
Yeah.
He was angry about it, even though he agreed with the rule change. But that was a great example of, because the Patriots did it, they changed the rule.
Well, and I think it really goes to show, and I remember that Belichick being pissed about that, because it goes to show that Belichick has these ideas. They don't look. The extra point change is a perfect example. Belichick had been advocating to move the extra point back for years, and they didn't do it, and then finally they did it, and it was like, well, yeah, I've been asking for you to do this, and so that was one of the ones where I felt like, you do it two weeks in a row, the Patriots do it to show like, hey, this rule's stupid and we shouldn't be doing this anymore, and now you're going to change it after the fact, and it's like, you know, that's the way the NFL works.
And that's, you know, that's Bill sticking it to him a little bit. Like, if you don't want to change it, okay, we're going to use it.
Exactly.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Which I do find it kind of fitting that then in the last Brady Belichick game, it's Vrabel coming in as the opposing coach, doing the same thing back to them.
Yeah,
the guy who is the one calling the timeouts and the plays we're talking about.
Right.
Truly learning from him.
Yeah. No, and it's, well, I have to say, you know, you mentioned the Patriots kind of, you know, we've talked about it a bunch on here, but, you know, capitalizing on mistakes. And it's interesting that Vrabel comes in, and obviously the season hasn't started yet, but he talked about that already. And that's a big a part of it is we need to capitalize on mistakes from the other team, right? We need to be able to go out and, you know, take advantage of bad football being played, right? And I think that that's something that the Patriots, this iteration of the Patriots, were exceptionally good at. And if the Patriots can do that even a little bit, you know, in this situation, in this year, you feel a lot better about their chances, you know, moving forward. And, you know, and so we'll see. Of course, he was part of that team.
And I think another thing that goes with consistency is consistency of the coaches.
Mm-hmm.
You know, obviously, when you win, teams come to pluck your coaches. But I think there were 6 guys on the staff that went on to become head coaches in the 14. Obviously, Charlie Weiss and Romeo Crennel leave after the Super Bowl that year. But you had Dayball.
Yep.
Josh McDaniels,
mm-hmm.
Eric Mangini, and Matt Patricia was like just getting started.
Yeah.
In 04. He was a coaching assistant.
Yeah.
So we had 6 guys on that staff that went on to be head coaches. Obviously, none with a ton of success.
Still, though.
Running their own show, but shows the quality of coaches they did have.
Yeah, for sure.
And then Brad Seeley, Dante Scarnecchia, those guys were great coaches. Ivan Fears didn't become head coaches, but were great assistant coaches.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. One note about the game here. Sean Alexander, I think, doesn't get the credit that he deserves for the type of player that he was. Of course, he had that unbelievable year in 05 where he scores 27 touchdowns and wins MVP and everything. But from 01 to 05, he rushes for over 1,100 yards in all of those years, rushes for at least 14 touchdowns in all 5 of those years as well. I mean, that's the best one of the best 5-year stretches for a running back of all time. And of course, after that 05 season, he deals with some injuries, gets banged up, and never crosses the 900-yard threshold again in his final 3 seasons. But, that 5-year stretch was an incredible 5-year stretch. And I think if they win the Super Bowl in 06, now I know he's a little banged up in that season, but if they win the Super Bowl in 06 and he plays well in that game, there's a strong argument for him in the Hall of Fame. Look at a guy like Terrell Davis, who, of course, had an incredible career himself, but injuries cut his career short and everything else. He really only had that 5-year stretch. But because he won the Super Bowl, because he was so good, I think that he gets in the Hall of Fame. I think if Sean Alexander does that in 06, that there's a good chance he makes the Hall of Fame.
And with all due respect, I don't think he did it long enough to be in the Hall of Fame.
I agree with you on that.
By the way, he was obviously fabulous.
Right.
During their back-to-back Super Bowls, but I think you just have to do it longer. I don't think Kurt Warner probably got in because he took another team to a Super Bowl.
Right.
But if you look at his career, probably 4 Hall of Fame seasons out of 12, lost his job in 2 places.
Yeah.
Well, and by the way, in Arizona, I think Matt Leinart beat him out to start.
Yeah, he did.
He had some great runs and obviously an MVP season and was awesome in St. Louis for a stretch, but Hall of Fame? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting about Warner is I think he only had 3 seasons in his career where he played in every regular season game. In all 3 of those, his team goes to the Super Bowl. So it's like he's the ultimate boom or bust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, side note, because we're talking about Hall of Fame here, I did not mention before, but I should have. That Seahawks team had Walter Jones and Steve Hutchinson on the left side, 2 guys in the Hall of Fame. That helps if you're Sean Alexander. That helps you run the ball. But you just think about the talent in the trenches when the Seahawks are on the field. You got those guys on one side, and Willie and Seymour and
Ty Warren
on the other side. Yeah, like just unbelievable physical matchup.
That defense, Willie 1st round pick, Ted Johnson 2nd round pick, Brewski was a 3rd or 4th?
2nd, I believe.
It was a 3rd, I think. But Ty Law was a 1st round pick. So you had some talent there for sure.
Oh yeah. And Ty, Richard, they were all 1st round picks too. It's some really, really great players.
2nd round pick.
I think Wilson was the 2nd round pick.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, and maybe if Vince Wilfork gets in the Hall of Fame, you have 3 Pro Football Hall of Famers on defense,
which he should be. And by the way, the fact that Rodney Harrison isn't a Hall of Famer is a joke.
I couldn't agree with you more.
It's just I will say, watching the games back, it's wild how he just takes shots at people at times. But that's how he played. That's how he played. He was absolutely hated, but he deserves it, man. If he had played 10 years earlier, he's better than Ronnie Lott. He would have been considered better than Ronnie Lott, one of the best safeties.
Yeah, and I think he was better than John Lynch.
There's no argument.
Year, for him to come out of the final 15 last year was a travesty, especially with all due respect. He's a far better football player than Eli Manning.
Yes.
I know Eli Manning beat Tom Brady twice in Super Bowls, and he's going to get in because of that and because of his last name.
Yep.
But, he's a guy who rode a roller coaster in his career. Probably, I don't know his stats, but he's probably got as many interceptions as touchdowns.
He's literally a 500 player. His career he has a 500 win.
Terry Bradshaw has as many interceptions as touchdowns, but in a different era where they were throwing the ball 40 yards down the field all the time.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Eli is going to get in because he beat those Patriots teams, which I think is a testament to how good those Patriots teams were. But that 07 Patriots team is as good as it is. The defense is as good as it is in large part because Rodney Harrison's playing on it.
Right.
So if we're saying that Eli deserves it for his performance in big games like that, like Rodney Harrison was a part of that defense that he beat and was a guy who made big plays in big games his entire Patriots tenure.
And I'm going to do something I'm probably not supposed to do, but when we meet for the Patriots Hall of Fame committee meeting, Ernie Adams is on that committee. And when we would talk about Rodney before he got in, he would just say, Rodney would come in and say, I got Dallas Clark. And he would just line up on Dallas Clark, and that's it. Like, he could just do that. And they trusted him to do that. And he was such an impact player on those teams. I don't know if the suspension affects him at all. But I mean, he's the only player with like 30 sacks and 30 interceptions or something.
Yeah, him and Ray Lewis are the only two.
Ray Lewis. So it's pretty good company to be in.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, that's a joke.
I think the fact that he comes in as an immediate captain for the 03 Patriots too, like I don't know if captainship is technically a qualifier here for Hall of Fame.
I think he became a captain because his teammates went to Bill.
Yeah,
and to have that kind of teammate support as a free agent addition to a team that immediately wins 2 Super Bowls, largely because of what the defense is able to do in both of those seasons. You know?
I mean they cut Lloyd Malloy.
Well, they wanted Lloyd to take a pay cut, and he wouldn't.
Still, you're right. Yep, that's a good point. So, but all right, this has been a ton of fun. Obviously, go ahead, Matt. Go ahead.
I can just throw in a couple of notes of other things that happened that week real quick if we want to do that. Because there's a couple of funny things.
Of course, as we mentioned, that same exact day, the Red Sox, well, technically not that day because it does go past midnight. Yeah. But starting on that day, the Red Sox do win Game 4 of the ALCS against the Yankees at Fenway Park. And they, obviously starting off an unbelievable 4-day run.
Well, like I'm assuming you're a Boston fan. You wake up that morning thinking, all right, well, by the end of this game, we're thinking, well, the Patriots won. At least we got to see that because the Sox are about to get swept and lose to the Yankees in the ALCS for the second year in a row tonight. Yeah. And by the end of that week, the next time the Patriots take the field, Red Sox are on their way to the World Series.
Yeah. And I covered the 05 Red Sox opener because Bruschi and Seymour.
That's right.
The first pitch with Bill Russell and Bobby Orr. I always say this was one of the greatest days of my professional life. I sat in a room with those 4 guys, and I think Brian Lowe, who was doing our web TV hosting back then on Patriots.com.
Yeah, I remember him.
And we sat in the room for about an hour and a half with those 4 guys, listening to Bill Russell hold court and tell stories.
Man.
But that was the day that Red Sox fans cheered Mariano Rivera, gave him a standing ovation.
Yep.
And they announced him in the pregame ceremony.
Wow. The first World Series game was actually played before the Patriots took the field again. So that's crazy that you leave that game thinking this could be it for the Sox, and the next time you see the Patriots, Sox are 1-0 on the Cardinals in the World Series.
And the Patriots beat the Jets, which is always nice.
Yes, it is. The undefeated Jets at that time.
Yeah, I do find funny the way that the opponents kind of lined up. Like when the Patriots, the year before, when they're playing the Yankees in the ALCS, they're also playing the Giants that Sunday, and then they go play Miami the next week. If the Red Sox go to the World Series, they're playing the same cities the Red Sox are back-to-back weeks there, and then right after the Sox eliminate the Yankees, you go play the Jets.
I still remember the '99 season when Pedro struck out 17 in New York the same day or the same weekend that the Patriots played the Jets, and Vinny Testaverde ruptured his Achilles.
Oh my Lord! Sheesh. Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah.
And the Patriots won, even though Tom Tupa came in and threw a touchdown pass in that game.
My goodness. Yeah, that's back up. That was when Parcells was there, I assume, yes?
Parcells, but in the fourth quarter they put Rick Meyer in.
Oh my God, man. He was there for them too. Yeah. Jesus. That's crazy. Yeah.
So good memories.
Yeah.
Coming back to this week 6 in 04, we've got the Steelers behind Ben Roethlisberger, rookie Ben Roethlisberger in Dallas with a come-from-behind victory, 14 points in the fourth quarter to win that one. Ben Roethlisberger wins Offensive Player of the Week for the AFC team that we'll see later. Another team that we'll see later, the Philadelphia Eagles, they host the Panthers in a rematch of the NFC Championship from the year before, and blow them out. They score the first 23 points of the game. Lito Shepherd has a pick 6 in that one. We talked about it on a couple episodes ago, but the Panthers really fell apart quickly the next season. They start 1-7 the next year. And then teasing us into the next episode here, the Jets come back from down 14-0 at home against the 49ers. Brandon Lloyd scoring a touchdown in that game for the 49ers. The Jets come back and end up winning that one 22-14. So the Jets are 5-0 at this point, entering Foxborough the next week against an undefeated Patriots team.
Yeah. Yep. So matchup of Titans at that point, and the Jets The Jets are a great team, and they actually, during this game, go to a few of those game breaks. You see the 33-yard touchdown pass from Tim Rattay to Brandon Lloyd, and then you see Curtis Martin's touchdown run to ice the game. But
Tim Rattay, one of the Brady Six.
yes, he was.
No,
Yeah.
is he?
No.
No.
It was what's his name? Who's the guy?
Giovanni
who
Carmazzi was
Carmazzi was definitely. I thought Rattay was in that draft too.
T. Martin.
Carmazzi definitely was.
Yeah.
And that was San Francisco. So
yeah. Carmazzi, T. Martin, Chad Pennington, Mark
Tim Rattay was in that draft, but he was after Brady.
Oh, okay.
At 212. So it's interesting. The Niners drafted 2 quarterbacks.
Was he the next quarterback taken?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, he was only taken 13 picks later, so you would think so.
Wonder if there's another world where we're talking about the Rattay 7.
Yeah, right. So I don't know if Tim Rattay actually had that in him, but
I doubt it.
Anyways, well, Bryan, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
No problem.
I know
you're living it.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to go back and relive. Of course, you've lived it a lot closer. Matt was like 5 at the time.
Yeah. What's actually funny for me, because my dad would always get the championship DVDs. So for these games, that is how I've experienced them. And I've seen the DVDs a million times, but like I'm watching the Seahawks game and I know the Bethel Johnson catch because I've seen the DVD, but we got 3 minutes left in the game. I'm like, this play still hasn't happened yet. Like, is that the play that seals it? And of course it is.
And one of the most memorable parts of that season was in St. Louis when Earthwind Moreland goes down and Troy Brown comes in on defense.
Yeah.
Really plays the rest of the year as a nickel defensive back, gets 3 interceptions, including one against Bledsoe.
Yep.
Plays in the Super Bowl, like at defensive back. I mean, just, one of those great testaments to both Troy Brown and, Bill's willingness to use guys in different ways and different roles. And, the more you can do, the more you can do, as he used to say. Yeah,
that's definitely true, and that's, it is fun. It's fun going through it. And again, I was in college, and so I was at a lot of these home games, but in a different capacity than you were at these games. So it is fun to kind of talk to someone who was in the room, when these things happen. So as Hamilton, to paraphrase Hamilton there. So, this has been a lot of fun. Are you still now? I know you're teaching, just like me. You're a public school teacher now, but you're still working a little bit with the hall, are you not?
Yeah, I'm doing some exhibit work for them, and whatever they need. I presume I'll work on induction. I always do a little bit for that. They just opened an exhibit called Patriots in the Pro Football Hall of Fame that highlights the 11 people that have played for the Patriots that are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, including 6 that are also in the Patriots Hall of Fame, I think is the number. But it also looks at who might be next, goes through the process on how you can get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And Mike Reese actually wrote something for us about his thoughts on who should definitely get in.
Oh, cool.
Aside, he talks about Brady and Belichick very briefly.
Of course.
Because they're going to get in for sure.
Right.
But, what's the next iteration of guys that could get in or should get in, more importantly?
Yeah. Very cool. That's very cool. And like we talked about, there's a lot of guys very deserving, certainly from this 03-04 squad. And obviously, as you go through that second dynasty and even really kind of those in between years, you look at a guy like Wes Welker as, can you make an argument for Welker making the Hall of Fame?
When get in the Patriots Hall of Fame first.
I know. Yeah, that's
not going to get any easier.
Sure isn't. No,
Next year, you have Gronk eligible.
Yep. So, and Adam's got to get in at some point. So
exactly.
But hey, that's the way it goes. So I thought I was a little upset. I have to tell you, I was a little upset when it was Edelman over at Adam this year. I thought Adam incredibly well deserving. Played here his whole career. Obviously, was a great player, a huge part of those 3 championships. From 14 to 18. But Adam's the best kicker in the NFL history, in my opinion. And
the 3 finalists were my 3 votes.
Yeah,
and I put Adam 1.
Yeah.
And then there's debate in the room for sure about Julian and Wes.
Yep.
My deciding factor in that, like one guy's got like 670 catches or 690 catches. The other one's got 620. So
Right.
Wes has more catches. Wes is the all-time receptions leader.
Yep.
But just the fact that what Julian was able to do in the postseason, to me, they're close enough in the regular season.
Yeah.
That put Julian over Wes, in my opinion.
Yep.
And then once Julian gets on the ballot and becomes a fan vote, he's going to have probably a little bit of an advantage over Adam. Now, I say that Raymond Claiborne was voted in by the fans over more current guys. So, you never know. But, there's no doubt that Adam will get in. There's no doubt that, Gronk will get in. Wes will probably get in at some point, I would think.
You would think so. Yeah.
But you're going to have Bill coming up, and he'll get in by fan vote probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a fascinating look into it,
And I love that there's only one, generally speaking. Now, there could be a senior committee selection that comes up, whether that's like a Chuck Fairbanks.
Yep.
Who was really Bill Parcells here before Bill Parcells in the 70s when he took it over and turned the franchise around. So, it'll be interesting to see where that goes. But I like that it's one player a year because I think it keeps it elite.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
I'm curious about a guy like, once Devin McCourty's time comes up here too, he's someone who I feel like, not going to be a Pro Football Hall of Famer, but he's
certainly a team Hall of Famer.
For sure.
Yeah.
Whatever team he was on.
Yeah.
But he happened to be on ours.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And you know what? I think he's not going to get in the Hall of Fame, but I do think that he's closer than some people would think. He played at a very, very high level at his position for a long time.
You know what? Like people talk about Julian in Pro Football Hall of Fame, and I say, guys, listen, it's okay to be a really good player,
right,
and not be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah,
that should be left to the top of the top.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and there's always going to be a place, right, where there's a line. Someone's always going to be on the close spot because, of course. But it's okay to be really good and not be in.
It's a fair point.
I think to me, Devin is a guy who he played at an era where there were a lot of safeties who just happened to have one or two elite years. So there's a bunch of years where he could have been an All-Pro, but Jamal Adams had those couple really good years in there, and there's a couple other guys in there who just had, I think maybe Eric Berry beats him out one year, and it's these guys are very good players in their own right too. And then you look and it's McCourty just doesn't have the accolades to be a Hall of Famer, even though I think
he's got the tenure.
Yeah.
Well,
I think he had the pure talent and ability to be a Hall of Famer in a different world where things break differently.
By the way, he also had corner his first year.
Yeah.
Well, and then safety is such a reputation thing for the voting too. So by the time he has some seasons in there where he probably should have been getting more votes for football, All-Pro, whatever, but he doesn't have the reputation yet because he's just switching into it. And then by the time he finally gets that reputation, the defense is good. That's when Jamal Adams comes onto the scene and has 2 or whatever was really good years. And so McCourty's probably a top 5 safety every single one of these seasons, and at no point to see a top 2 or 3 safety.
Yeah,
that's probably fair.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, this has been. I feel like we could talk about Patriots Football Hall of Fame for forever, but we'll let you go. Thanks for coming on, Brian. We really appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thanks. It was fun.
We'll maybe we'll look forward to having you on in another 6 years. I guess pencil it in for 2031.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, guys.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Be good to each other and go Pats.
All right. Thanks.